Ever think about what it would be like to be reunited with somebody, like someone you thought you'd lost forever? I mean, after decades.
Yeah.
Today we're diving into some recent true crime stories
Yeah.
that really got me thinking about that, about justice and loss and what it means to find answers after years of uncertainty. We've got a mix of stories today. We've got a cold case that spans an unbelievable 70 years, a young dancer's tragic death, a shocking story about a baby being sold, and a scandal rocking the music world.
Wow,
Yeah.
it's fascinating how all these stories, like as different as they are, all kind of touch on those like universal themes, you know?
Yeah,
Hope and despair and the longing for resolution. It's
exactly.
yeah.
Let's start with a story that's both heartbreaking and hopeful. Back in 1951, a 6-year-old boy named Luis Armado Albino disappeared from a park in Oakland, California. Just vanished.
Oh, wow.
Can you imagine what his family went through, not knowing what happened to their little boy?
It's a parent's worst nightmare, right? For 70 years, his family lived with that agonizing uncertainty. His mother, sadly, passed away in 2005, never knowing what became of her son.
But get this. In a twist of fate that seems almost impossible, Lewis was found alive and well earlier this year, living on the East Coast. It all started with a simple DNA test taken by his niece, who discovered she had an unknown uncle.
The power of technology, right?
Yeah.
It's amazing how a DNA test can unravel a mystery that's been unsolved for decades. The Oakland Police Department reopened the case, and they were able to locate Lewis, who had built a whole life for himself during those missing years. He became a father, a grandfather, served in the Marines, and even became a firefighter.
It's like something out of a movie.
Yeah.
He recently flew back to Oakland for an emotional reunion with his family.
Oh, wow.
Of course, while finding him alive is incredible, it's also tinged with sadness. His mother never got to see him again, and his brother, who he did reconnect with, passed away shortly after.
It really makes you think about how life can change in an instant and how precious those connections are. And while this story does offer some sense of closure, it also raises so many questions, you know? What happened to Luis during those 70 years? Who took him and why? The police are still investigating, trying to piece together those missing decades.
Yeah. It makes you wonder about the stories that are still out there, waiting to be discovered. And speaking of unanswered questions, our next case is shrouded in mystery and sadness. Emily Gold, a talented 17-year-old dancer who even impressed Simon Cowell on America's Got Talent, was tragically killed recently in what appears to be a car accident.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Emily's death has just sent shockwaves through her community. She was a beloved member of her dance team, a bright young woman with so much potential. The circumstances surrounding her death are still being investigated, which only adds to the heartbreak. Yeah, the details are still emerging, but authorities are considering the possibility of suicide, which makes this case even more difficult to grapple with. What would lead such a vibrant young woman down such a dark path? It's a reminder that behind those bright smiles, anyone could be struggling silently.
Absolutely. And it highlights the importance of reaching out to those around us, checking in on their well-being, and fostering open conversations about mental health. We never truly know what someone else is going through.
Okay, brace yourselves because this next story is truly disturbing. It involves an Arkansas couple, Darian and Shalene, who are accused of trying to sell their 2-month-old baby, and you won't believe what they allegedly wanted in return. A 6-pack of beer and a $1,000 cashier's check.
Oh my gosh. The details of this case are just hard to stomach. The incident allegedly happened at a campground where witnesses reported seeing Shalene asking for beer and offering her baby in exchange for money. A handwritten contract was even discovered outlining the terms of this unthinkable transaction.
It's just mind-boggling. Thankfully, the campground manager contacted the authorities, and the baby was taken into protective custody. The couple is now facing charges of endangering the welfare of a minor.
This case is just a stark reminder of how vulnerable children are and how crucial it is to have systems in place to protect them. It also makes you question, where were the safety nets for this family? What kind of desperation would lead parents to even contemplate such an act?
And to add to the frustration, there's a significant disparity in the bail amounts set for the couple. Shalene remains in custody with a $30,000 bail, while Darian was released on a $5,000 bond. It feels like a slap in the face considering the gravity of the accusations.
Yeah, it's definitely something that raises questions about fairness within the legal system and how these cases are handled. While we don't have all the details about the factors that led to the judge's decision, it's understandable why people would be outraged by the discrepancy.
It's a lot to process, isn't it? And we're not done yet. Stick with us as we delve into another disturbing case of familicide and then explore the Diddy scandal that's sending shockwaves through the music industry.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
ready. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm ready.
it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? How many more stories like this are out there, hidden in the shadows?
It's a sobering thought, and it brings us to another case where a family was left searching for answers. But this time, those answers were much closer to home and much more horrifying. This story takes us to Arizona, where a young man named Alejandro Gonzalez has been arrested for the brutal murder of his own mother, Teresa Rubio.
Oh, wow.
What strikes me about this case is the sheer brutality of the crime. Teresa was found decapitated in her own home. The level of violence is just unimaginable, especially when you consider the perpetrator was her own son.
It's just gut-wrenching. And to make matters worse, the family had already expressed concerns about Alejandro's mental health. They even warned that he might be capable of harming his mother. He had recently been released from jail and was living with Teresa at the time of the murder.
That detail really highlights the complex interplay of mental health and the criminal justice system. It raises questions about the support systems in place for individuals like Alejandro who clearly needed help but may not have received it.
It's a tragedy on so many levels. The details are just so disturbing. The police found a blood-stained knife in the apartment, suggesting he tried to clean up the scene. And get this, he was later caught at a gas station driving his aunt's SUV, which he had taken from his mother. He even had dried blood on his legs and socks.
It paints a chilling picture, doesn't it? It seems like he was trying to escape but just couldn't outrun the consequences of his actions. And the fact that he initially tried to blame the murder on a random man he met while smoking meth just adds another layer of complexity to the case.
It's just a heartbreaking reminder of the devastating effects of drug abuse and the ripple effects of violence within families. It leaves you wondering if anything could have been done to prevent this tragedy.
It's a question that haunts many similar cases, right? What
Hmm.
signs might have been missed? What interventions might have made a difference? It's a reminder that we need to be vigilant about mental health issues and provide support to those who are struggling, both within families and within our communities.
While that case grapples with the tragedy within a family, our next story exposes the potential darkness lurking beneath the glitz and glamour of the music industry. You'll recall the Diddy scandal that broke a while back, those initial charges of sex trafficking and racketeering that sent shockwaves through the music world.
And now, the story has taken an even darker turn. Over 120 individuals have come forward, accusing Diddy of sexual exploitation that allegedly spans over 2 decades. Even more disturbing is the fact that 25 of these accusers were minors at the time of the alleged offenses.
The attorney representing these alleged victims, Tony Busby, held a press conference recently, and he didn't hold back. He shared some absolutely chilling details, including one accusation involving a 9-year-old who was allegedly abused during a Bad Boy Records audition. Imagine that, a child lured with promises of a record deal, only to be preyed upon in such a horrific way.
It's a horrifying thought. And Busby claims this wasn't an isolated incident. He described a pattern of alleged abuse with Diddy, often isolating minors from their parents and using his power and influence to manipulate them. The allegations are incredibly serious and paint a truly disturbing picture of the power dynamics within the music industry.
Now, it's important to note that Diddy has vehemently denied all these charges. His legal team is calling the accusations false and defamatory. But the sheer number of accusers and the specific nature of their claims are hard to ignore.
It's a case that's dividing public opinion. Some are quick to believe the accusations, while others are reserving judgment until more evidence comes to light. It's a reminder that everyone deserves due process, but also that we need to take accusations of abuse seriously and investigate them thoroughly.
And the story doesn't end there. Busby has also promised to reveal a list of Diddy's alleged accomplices, including some household names.
Yeah.
He claims these individuals either participated in, encouraged, or helped cover up the alleged abuse.
That's a bombshell that could shake the entertainment industry to its core. If these allegations are proven true, it'll expose a network of complicity and silence that has allowed such abuse to continue for far too long. It raises a lot of questions about accountability and the responsibility of those in positions of power to protect the vulnerable.
Absolutely. And the potential unmasking of these alleged accomplices is sure to keep this story in the headlines. It makes you wonder how deep this goes and what it means for the industry as a whole. It really makes you think about the saying, like, power corrupts, doesn't it? And what happens when that power goes unchecked?
Yeah, it's a sobering thought. And, it's a reminder that We can't just turn a blind eye to these kinds of allegations, no matter who's involved.
Hmm.
We have a responsibility to hold people accountable for their actions, especially those in positions of authority.
Right. And speaking of accountability, this next story takes us back to a very different kind of case, one that's just bizarre and disturbing on so many levels. It's a case of familicide in Glendale, Arizona, where a 25-year-old man named Alejandro Gonzalez allegedly decapitated his own mother.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
This case, like the others we've discussed, is incredibly tragic. But it also raises some very specific questions about mental health and the criminal justice system. The victim, 49-year-old Teresa Rubio, was found decapitated in her own home by her own sister. Can you imagine the horror of that discovery?
It's just unthinkable.
Yeah.
And what makes it even more heartbreaking is that the family was actually on their way to surprise Teresa for her birthday when they found her.
Hmm.
What should have been a joyous occasion turned into an absolute nightmare.
It's a stark reminder that violence can erupt anywhere, even in the places we consider safe, like within our own families. And in this case, it seems like there were warning signs. Alejandro had recently been released from jail, and family members had reportedly expressed concerns about his mental state, even suggesting, he might be capable of harming his mother.
Yeah, it's just so sad. And the details of the crime are just gruesome.
Yeah.
Police found evidence of an attempted cleanup at the scene, including a bloodstained knife. Alejandro was later arrested at a gas station driving his aunt's SUV, which he had apparently taken from his mother. He even had dried blood on his legs and socks.
It sounds like he was trying to run, trying to escape the reality of what he had done, but in the end, he couldn't outrun the consequences. And the fact that he initially tried to blame the murder on someone else, a man he met while smoking meth, just adds another layer of tragedy and complexity to this case.
It's a reminder that drug abuse and mental health issues often go hand in hand, and that we need to do more to address these interconnected challenges. We need to provide better support systems for individuals struggling with these issues and ensure that they have access to the resources they need.
That's a crucial point. These cases aren't just isolated incidents. They highlight systemic issues that we as a society need to address. Whether it's the lack of mental health resources, the vulnerabilities within the child welfare system, or the abuse of power that can occur within institutions like the music industry, we have a responsibility to learn from these stories and work toward creating a safer and more just world.
So we've covered a lot of ground today, from a long-awaited reunion after 70 years to the dark side of fame and fortune and the devastating consequences of violence within families. These stories have taken us to some pretty dark places, but they've also reminded us of the resilience of the human spirit, the importance of fighting for justice, and the power of hope, even in the face of unimaginable tragedy.
I think that's a powerful takeaway. These cases, while difficult to confront, force us to grapple with uncomfortable truths about ourselves and our society. They challenge us to look beyond the headlines and consider the underlying issues that contribute to these kinds of tragedies. And ultimately, they remind us that we all have a role to play in creating a world where these stories become less and less frequent.
We often hear the saying, justice delayed is justice denied. But the story of Luis Armato Albino, reunited with his family after 7 decades, reminds us that sometimes, even after years of uncertainty, some measure of peace can be found. It makes you wonder, how many other stories are out there waiting for their resolution? And what role can each of us play in ensuring that justice, however delayed, is ultimately served? If you found this deep dive insightful and thought-provoking, make sure to subscribe and join us next time as we continue to explore the stories that matter. And we'd love to hear your thoughts on these cases. Share your reactions and insights with us on social media, and let's keep the conversation going.